Joining me for more on this, Brooke Goldstein, who's the director of the Lawfare Project and a human rights attorney. You know, Brooke, we talked earlier about how is the media going to cover this, and that's a critical part of how this plays out around the world, since part of this is the battle for people's hearts and minds and a propaganda war by some. What's happening now is, now that Israel's actually gone into Gaza and they're trying to close down these tunnels, you're seeing the deaths. You're seeing people get killed in these tunnels as they try to get into Israel. You're seeing children wind up murdered in Gaza. And you're seeing the reporters come out and start to get very emotional about the death toll that they're witnessing with their own eyes. That's important, and it's not necessarily helpful for the Israeli side.
It's not helpful for either side for the media to be reporting death tolls that I think at this point have been shown to be inaccurate. Al Jazeera, for example, reported that the majority of deaths were adult males, and yet we're hearing the UN report that the majority of deaths are children. So I think it's incumbent on the media at this point to report the facts. If they don't know what the facts are, to say that. And what we're also seeing now is a complete manipulation by the media of the laws of armed conflict, painting Israel, which is engaged in a defensive war right now against Hamas, a terrorist group that started this war with over 8,000 rockets, by the way, before this.
That's the thing, is like you need to also, if you're going to report the death toll, you also have to report the attempted death toll. I mean, it's like, yes, Israel is a more effective warrior than Hamas, but that doesn't mean that Hamas isn't trying with everything it has to kill as many Israeli citizens as it possibly can at every moment.
Right, and the irony of the situation is that the Palestinian Authority representative at the United Nations came out and condemned Hamas for war crimes, for intentionally targeting civilians. Even Egypt has come out and condemned Hamas and said if Hamas accepted the ceasefire, they're given 2 opportunities to accept a ceasefire. They rejected it.
They don't want
Even Egypt came out and said if they accepted, they would save lives. And yet the Western media and the United Nations does not have the moral courage to condemn Hamas.
There's so much equivocation. And even tonight, we have a readout from a call that we had between Secretary of State John Kerry and Prime Minister Netanyahu. It talks about how the Prime Minister tried to explain his decision to launch this operation. He tried to get rid of this terrorist infiltration into Israel through these tunnels and so on. And Secretary Kerry emphasized the need to avoid further escalation, to have a ceasefire, and saying that he reiterated our concern about the safety and security of civilians on both sides. And the importance of preventing civilian casualties.
Right, and again, it's a glaring omission of the condemnation of Hamas's not just targeting of Israeli civilians, but again, the brutal murder of its own civilians because it uses them as human shields. And it's also important to understand that Hamas is an Iranian proxy. This is a proxy war on behalf of Iran against the West. Hamas is using Iranian weapons, and by continuing to fund the Palestinian Authority, now that has a partnership with Hamas, and given the fact that we're engaged in nuclear negotiations with Iran, we're basically sending the message to Iran that we support their terrorist activity vis-a-vis Hamas in Gaza. And that is certainly not a position that we want to take. We have to cease the funding of the Palestinian Authority and Hamas immediately.
I got to go, so I need a quick answer. But how do you see this ending?
God willing, it ends very soon with minimum civilian casualties by Hamas accepting a ceasefire immediately.
Because it gets pressured by its neighbors in the region to do it.
Hopefully.
Brooke, good to see you.